International Research and Educational Society presents Derek Partridge, Jordan Maxwell, and special guest, Bill Jenkins.
What we will now offer you are facts, not fiction, myths, fairy tales, and allegory. However, as is often the nature of facts, they will probably be very uncomfortable for many people. They will undoubtedly shock and anger some of you, as they will challenge age-old beliefs and the very basis of the religious belief system on which you may have based your whole life. But these facts cannot possibly be as shocking and ungodly as the death, destruction, robbery, and suppression of truth that for centuries has epitomized the practice of religion. And please remember that I deliberately said offer you facts, as it is not our intention to be like so many missionaries and other religious proselytizers whose purpose it is to force you to change your beliefs under the threats of hellfire and eternal damnation if you don't. We just want you to listen, watch, and make up your own minds. In order to better understand what we humans are today, and so what we are likely to become tomorrow, we need to look back and study our origins and where we came from. Try now to imagine Earth in prehistoric times, a place filled with a multitude of dangers, giant animals and reptiles, huge predators, earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, and meteors, and the subsequent fear and hostility such an unfriendly environment would breed. If you could be a time traveler and be spirited back to these ancient times, complete with all the sophisticated modern knowledge you now have, admit it, you'd be scared to death. I know I would be. Now try to imagine what it must have been like for these ancient people, totally devoid of all the knowledge we now take for granted about the awesome forces of nature. A volcano erupts, destroying everything in its path. The sky reverberates with thunder as a violent electrical storm hurls thunderbolts to earth, which start fires. Tornadoes sweep people, animals, and trees away into the sky. The earth opens up and an earthquake swallows a village in the twinkling of an eye. Pretty scary stuff, still is today. But try and think of it as if you had absolutely no understanding of these natural occurrences at all. Then at night, gazing up into those fearsome skies filled with infinite numbers of stars, not to mention shooting stars, without having the remotest idea of what they were. I've slept in the desert at Petra in Jordan. The stars are not above you. They surround you like a giant canopy, and in the crystal clear air, you feel as if you can reach out and pluck one from the sky. However, lacking any form of scientific explanation, is it any wonder that these ancient peoples created a myriad of all-powerful nature gods and the countless myths that surrounded them? The gods which have been worshipped and sacrificed to for thousands of years since. For example, it was the mighty Thor who, when angry, struck his anvil with his hammer and created thunder, and the same Thor who, from his abode in the clouds or heavens, flung his lightning bolts at the terror-struck mortals below. If, alone in the dense forest, you, hardly surprisingly, felt fearful, and you sensed the presence of an unknown threat, well, that had to be the forest god, Pan, from whom we get our word panic. And at night, when it became cold, dark, dangerous, and downright frightening, without a convenient and comforting light switch, who else came out to rule but the fearsome Prince of Darkness? Then came the dawn, and with it light, warmth, and new life. And who brought it, and in so doing defeated the Prince of Darkness? None other than the sun, which became known as God's sun, the light of the world. Human beings are the only creatures capable of the process of logical thought, of imagination, and of questioning everything around them. In fact, the very evolution of humans has been dependent upon our ability to seek, find answers, and adapt. However, a small weakness has been that if a logical answer was not readily available, Human imagination often invented or created suitable and at least temporarily satisfying answers, such as the very basic need to have a reason to explain our existence, and the equally important need to feel that life must be for some purpose, and that it cannot simply end at death, but that there must be something beyond. This remains as true today as it was for ancient man. Consider again how little ancient man knew compared to us. In order to create some livable with explanation, gods and myths had to be created. All questions require answers, real or created, so that we can get on with life. So perhaps we can also understand why people sometimes killed or sacrificed other human beings to satisfy or placate the angry gods of nature. For example, to try and stop Thor from hurling a thunderbolt specifically at you. At the time, man didn't know any better. Supposedly today, we do know better. Sometimes you, like me, may wonder if we really do. Despite the existence of many larger and more powerful creatures in the jungles, man became and remains today the undisputed ruler of the earth for one simple reason: his mind. To make the closest analogy, we are both smaller and weaker than gorillas, but our minds are considerably more powerful and sophisticated. And yet, we continue to shed blood today, perhaps even more than before, and still in the name of the same god or gods and the same myths. Haven't we learned anything? Ancient man had to contend with countless areas of ignorance, which over the centuries gave way to informed enlightenment, with just two glaring exceptions. We still persist in the ancient ignorances of religion and myths, two words which have one definition in common. They are both nothing more than beliefs. Look at it this way. Would you consider running your business according to an instruction manual written some 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, and then translated 20 or more times before you read it? I very much doubt it. Yet many of us unquestioningly base the entire conduct of our lives on just such a manual, a collection of stories called the Bible. It is not merely having a superior mind that has allowed man to rule or dominate the earth, but by using it to create the ever-increasing array of technical wonders, sadly all too many of which are devoted to the sole purpose of destroying fellow man. That mind has not really changed much over the last few centuries, but because some brave people refuse to accept invented, convenient, or expedient answers, such as the earth being flat. Do you know it was once religious heresy, punishable by death to believe otherwise? And instead they continued to question and explore until such time as a logical and provable answer could be ascertained. Because of that, we have been able to progress from caveman to modern man, but still with the previously noted and glaring exception of religion, where we still stubbornly cling to unproven and unprovable centuries-old myths. Moreover, many religions tell their followers not to think, but to blindly follow their moral dictates, just as soldiers are drilled not to think, but to blindly follow orders. Isn't it strange how the orders issued by both religious and military leaders are often exactly the same? Go out and kill some of your fellow human beings. And both of them justify their killings in the same way, as being in the name of God. Surely our inbred, unique ability to think and reason was intended to be used to its fullest extent and capacity. So why the exceptions of religions and the myths on which they are based? Religions which still set out to keep people in ignorance. For instance, the Jesuit Index of Forbidden Books was described by Catholic brother Paolo Sarpi as the finest secret device ever invented for applying religion to the purpose of making men stupid. Religion which caused Cardinal Gaspari Contarini to state, "I cannot hide my indignation that some of the most illustrious Catholic cities are tainted with moral plague and loose ways to such a point that many monasteries designed to shelter virgins have now been turned into brothels. Can there be anything more abject and infamous?" Religion which caused Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre to comment in 1977, "The church is full of thieves, mercenaries, and wolves." Religion that, as reported in Time magazine, Catholic institutions have recently paid out some $300 million in the United States in settlements of cases where priests have been accused of sexually abusing underage boys, and there is no end in sight to other pending cases. Notre Dame philosophy professor Ralph McInnery said we, the Catholic Church, could be sued out of existence. Religion where in Saudi Arabia they have a special religious police force to enforce religious laws, and where religious leaders this year called for the execution by beheading of 9 women whose dreadful crime was that they actually dared to drive cars, and where the same religious leaders also wanted to behead every man who did not wear a beard for the purported crime of secularism. Religion where, according to Reuters, a resident of an ultra-Orthodox quarter of Jerusalem was excommunicated by his local religious court for the sin of possessing a defiling and disgusting object, a television set. I could go on citing examples like these for hours, but I'm sure you got the idea. If this is what religious beliefs can lead to, violent intolerance and murderous behavior that would simply not be tolerated in any normal, non-religious society, I wonder if I could be considered guilty of what is termed British understatement if I were to suggest that maybe, just maybe, something might be wrong with religion. But rather than even hint at an answer, I would rather you form your own opinions and draw your own conclusions as you watch what follows. If there is an answer, or a truth, surely it should not be based on myths, thousands of years old, myths which have caused so much death, suffering, and intolerance. There must be something more positive and benevolent than religion's enslavement and brainwashing of its followers with fear and threats of eternal damnation. Yet since the dawn of history, man has stubbornly maintained his beliefs in religions and the surrounding myths and superstitions. In this one area he has barely progressed since the Stone Age. Surely it is finally time, in fact long overdue, to open our eyes and take a good hard look at the facts, and only the facts, of what we call the naked truth. Most people understand that Christianity is an outgrowth of the earlier Hebrew faith. Consequently, you cannot understand Christianity correctly unless you first understand the faith of which Christianity is an outgrowth. That is why we have the Old and the New Testament. However, that's where most people leave it. An intelligent person who has done his homework knows that this is not where it stops. One cannot have Christianity without its parent Hebrew, and we cannot have Hebrew without its parent, the many more ancient Semitic religions. Hebrew is merely a recent occurrence in Semitic history. There is a Semitic religion behind Judaism, and behind the Semitic is Egyptian, and behind the Egyptian is Sumerian, and behind the Sumerian is a more ancient one. It's all a long Semitic bloodline coming through history. So let's start way back in ancient times where it all began.